How did our moves in Mexico go, and what do we need to know before Brazil? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Wednesday, October 30th. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, it's going to be another jam-packed episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position due to the delay in the scores coming out from F1 Fantasy. I am going to do a quick Mexico Grand Prix review and then get into the Brazil Grand Prix preview. So yeah, one piece of content this week as far as pre-recorded stuff will come out. Just because of the delay in the game. Had a little bit of problem with the scoring. I'm sure we all know it by now. Alexander Albon, Yuki Tsunoda had some overtakes. Not entirely sure the backstory behind what took so long to get the game back up and running. Maybe people made some moves. Just another step not in the right direction for the game, but that's for a probably like off-season episode that we can get into about like our hopes for the game moving forward. But anyway, let's get into it here. Like I said, you can like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, give me a comment. How did your Mexico Grand Prix go? And yeah, you can follow me on X at F1UNFPL. But here is how my team did: 252 points. Lando, Carlos, Franco, Valtteri, Alexander Albon, Ferrari, and McLaren bringing home the points. I got a green arrow of literally 41 places. That is the smallest green arrow I have ever seen in F1 Fantasy or FPL. Let me know if you went up or down even less than that. But yeah, it really didn't move. Still right outside the top 7,000, but it wasn't too bad. Overall, the decision making behind going with Carlos Sainz proved to be quite well or go quite well. I did not have the final fix chip, so I did not final fix in Oscar Piastri after his dismal qualifying. However, I actually lost points, but with my transfers, I went from Piastri down to Sainz and then Zhou Guanyu up to Albon. So I actually lost 4 points in the transfers I made. However, the long-term goal or the hopeful goal for those transfers was to gain enough budget that I could get to Charles Leclerc for the Brazil Grand Prix, and it worked out barely, like skin of my teeth. We'll get into it in the team selection video. And like I said, it's going to be a pretty busy episode this week. So look at the timestamps in the description below if you want to jump around, if you're not really about the Mexico Grand Prix review portion of this and just kind of want to get into like what my thoughts are ahead of the Brazil Grand Prix at Interlagos this weekend. But yeah, 252 points, the smallest green arrow I've ever seen. But I got some budget and lost some points with my transfers. Going over here, looking at some chip usage, thanks to F1FantasyTools.com global top 500. Not a huge week for chips. As you can see, final fix 7.4% of the global top 500 used it. There's still 43% of managers have their final fix in the top 500 in the world. I'm assuming it was mostly for Oscar Piastri. Maybe some people brought in Charles Leclerc, but or Carlos Sainz, actually. And then, yeah, autopilot 2.2%. That probably worked out pretty well if you did kind of have like the Lando Oscar pairing, Lando Carlos, Lando Charles Leclerc. Like, didn't go too badly. It's pretty good weekend to use that chip as well. But yeah, like barely anyone used extra DRS. No one used Limitless. No negative, not very popular either. So not a huge week for chips. I'm sure we'll see that change at the Brazilian Grand Prix this upcoming weekend. Team selection in the global top 500, most selected team, the template team for F1 Fantasy in the global top 500. Franco Colapinto, Lando Norris, Alexander Albon, Nico Hulkenberg, and Charles Leclerc right there. Most added, Tsunoda, Lawson, Sainz, Leclerc, Colapinto, and the most dropped were Albon, Verstappen, Russell, Piastri, and Zhou Guanyu. As you can see there, if you dropped Alexander Albon to move up to Yuki Tsunoda, that did kind of not work out. So I'm wondering just how many managers actually made that exact transfer from Alexander Albon up to Yuki Tsunoda. Yeah, maybe some people were trying to move up in a different category of driver. Lawson came in. Sainz was pretty popular after his strong showing in the free practices. Leclerc was popular as well. Ferrari showed us quite a lot in practices. It looked a little bit shaky in FP3 on Saturday morning, but they did pull through. Carlos came through with the pole, came through with the win. Overall, even snuck in a couple of overtakes there just to kind of raise his average. And then most dropped category, yeah, Albon, Verstappen after his engine kind of woes on Friday. And it has actually come out, well, per Helmut Marko, that Verstappen is going to take an engine penalty in Brazil and he will get a grid penalty for the Brazilian Grand Prix. So if you are like a sub $130 million team with your cost cap, that probably doesn't matter to you all that much. You're maybe not going for Max Verstappen anyway. However, if you are over 130 million, we'll get into it in my team selection, where one of my teams has like 135, 36 million going on right now. It could be an option this weekend if you are feeling good about Red Bull's prospects. However, I think they're the third fastest car on the grid, and Brazil usually does quite well for Mercedes. So we could be looking at Red Bull being the fourth fastest car this weekend. We'll wait to see what we get on Friday with practice one and the sprint qualifying. Going over here to the final fix dilemma, Oscar Piastri went out in Q1. He's been having a rough couple of weeks here for the Australian. We're going to get into that later as well. But right here, I have the quali and the race points for each driver that were kind of in the top five: Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and Max Verstappen. As you can see here, Piastri 0 points on Saturday, but 26 in the race on Sunday. So if you final fixed him in, you kind of want to compare him to these drivers here: Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, and Max Verstappen. So if you transferred final fixed Piastri in for Carlos Sainz on Sunday, I'm not sure how many people did that. You actually lost not 11 points here. Charles Leclerc, you lost 2. Lando Norris, you gained 5. And Max Verstappen, you gained 14. So overall, I'm not sure how many people were actually bringing signs out for Piastri. I wish we could kind of learn that. That'd be great. But yeah, Lando Norris is a pretty popular move. It was okay. Like Piastri did all right. Didn't really get anywhere close to making like a huge like, oh my god, he's on the podium kind of move like we saw with Lando in Baku. Although that was thanks to Checo and Carlos Sainz kind of crash right at the end there. But yeah, in general, I think if you use the chip, you probably got between like 6 to like 12 points back from Piastri. So not too bad overall. I couldn't even remember what I played my final fix on. I think I did um, Piastri or Lando out and brought in Charles Leclerc. And I don't think it went that well, actually, because Lando had a fantastic drive on that Sunday in Azerbaijan. So maybe that is for a post-mortem episode, just kind of seeing where the best final fix use of that chip would have been overall. But yeah, it was a pretty good weekend if you did the Piastri switch, especially if you 2 times them. That would have been quite nice. Yeah, 52 points right there would have worked out quite well. So I think it was a good weekend to use it, especially with the chips winding down. It seems like Brazil is going to have some weather concerns, so extra DRS might not be a good use of the chip there. So I think a lot of people are going to save it for Qatar. And yeah, the races are running out. 4 races to go. If you've got 4 chips, you're going to have to use a chip every single week. I've got 1 left and I might play it this weekend. We're going to get into that later as well. Deadline live stream Saturday. I will be there 1 hour before the lineup lock for the sprint. We can go over all the F1 fantasy questions we need to. I don't think I'll be bringing in Lewis Hamilton unless I see something insane, but we're going to go over like the sprint qualifying, how that went down, what we learned from FP1, the data, simulations, all that fun stuff. So bring your best questions to the deadline live stream on Saturday ahead of the sprint for the Brazil Grand Prix, and we can just chit chat F1 and yeah, just have a great time. See where we're going to go as we enter the 3rd race of the triple header before a little bit of a break and then another triple header to end the season. But yeah, I will set up the like kind of reminder thing online later tonight. And yeah, deadline live stream. I will see you there on Saturday. Going over here to a quick preview, the Autodromo Jose Carlos pace, 4.309 kilometers, 71 laps, 15 corners, 2 DRS zones. The first Grand Prix here was in 1973. You can really manipulate the DRS. There was no better example of this than last year when I think it was like 2, 3 laps ago, Sergio Perez was catching Fernando Alonso, his last podium in F1 so far. And Alonso manipulated it perfectly where he came out of I believe it was the first DRS behind Perez, but then he got picked up DRS for that second zone, or I guess it was the first zone here. He got passed on the second zone as the lap finished. And yeah, just kind of passed Perez, defended, and then waited his moment and struck like the wily craftsman he is in the F1 car, and it was perfect. So there's definitely some kind of like shenanigans that can go on with DRS here if you are playing it right. But yeah, really looking forward to the Friday data to see, is Ferrari still going to be strong here? How's McLaren looking? Are they getting a handle on their upgrades that they've brought? Rumor has it that they're bringing more upgrades again this weekend. So they're really making a championship push. Ferrari is right on their tails in the Constructors' Championship, and they need a really decent result from Piastri to kind of get past Verstappen and Lando to win to kind of kickstart a final surge for the last 3 races of the F1 season. C3, C4, C5 are the tires here. It's been that way for a lot of the races down the stretch here. I think I saw the last time they used the C1 was like 7 races ago. So yeah, it's softest compound tires coming yet again to an F1 race over the weekend. The weather, I've seen conflicting reports. This is the weather I saw as of this morning: 25 degrees Celsius on Friday, 7% chance of precipitation. Saturday, 26%, 9% chance of precipitation. And then Sunday is the big day we got to watch out for here: 24 degrees Celsius, 55% chance of precipitation. That could change. It is Wednesday, October 30th. There was some wild weather in Brazil last year. If you remember, like one of the canopies on one of the grandstands got torn off like overnight on Friday. So yeah, we definitely got to watch out for that as well. The weather could change quite quickly, and I will definitely be going over that on the Deadline live stream on Saturday. Similarity between circuits, thanks to F1 Big Data. He's got Sao Paulo right next to Austin. That should spell pretty good things for Ferrari and possibly McLaren. So very interesting there. We'll see if Friday's data can kind of match up to that, see what we can take from all that information that we're going to get there. And moving on to Oscar Piastri here. This is kind of the biggest talking point I think there is in F1 fantasy right now. Like, is Oscar Piastri actually someone we want in our F1 fantasy teams? I'm kind of starting to lean towards not. So is he hitting the sophomore slump? He's been really good this year. I'm not trying to take anything away from Oscar Piastri. It's like been delightful to have him in our F1 fantasy teams. He's provided a lot of value, been some fantastic performances. However, from Austria to Azerbaijan, the Australian was averaging 32.57 points per race. That was pretty dang good. Last 3 races, however, it has slumped down a little bit to 23.33 points per race. In Austin, he went out in SQ1. In Mexico, he went out in Q1. Hasn't made the front 2 rows in qualifying since Azerbaijan. And it's kind of like it's nitpicky because I think Piastri has the talent to be a future world champion, but the shine is kind of fading off of him a little bit as the season winds down. It happened a little bit at the end of last season as well. He did win the Qatar sprint over like the final 5 races of the season, but in general, it was kind of trending down a little bit there as well. I'm just wondering if that's happening again. The team is obviously in quite a battle for the Constructors' Championship. They really want Lando to push Max all the way for the Drivers' Championship as well. And it just seems like Piastri is hitting a rough patch of form at exactly the wrong time. I know he had a pretty good recovery drive in both instances there. I think he got up to 11th in the sprint in Austin, and then he came all the way up the grid to 7th, I believe, in Mexico. So still, like, for F1 fantasy purposes, he's good, but I think overall, like, you'd want him to be on the front 2 rows there, like with Lando, with Carlos, with Charles, and just kind of competing there and putting more of a gap between Lando and Max Verstappen is if possible. So yeah, I'm not really keen on Oscar in F1 fantasy, to be honest. And that kind of brings me into green flag, yellow flag, red flag for this week. Another shortened version due to just the mega episode that I'm doing right now. Leclerc gets a green flag because why not? He's won in Coda, and then took third here, or third in Mexico last weekend. Hopefully, he can get to the start line this weekend in the Grand Prix, as that did not go so well for him last year. Piastri, I'm going to give the red flag. I think I would rather have Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz than Oscar Piastri right now. So that's going to get a red flag for me. Might be a little controversial, but yeah, I want more Ferrari assets right now, especially with Sao Paulo looking like it's going to be quite similar to Austin per F1 Big Data on X. And yeah, I like if you can get the Ferrari options, I think I'm gonna go there over Oscar Piastri right now. Esteban Ocon gets the yellow flag. He's finished top 10 here the last 3 years, so he does enjoy this track a little bit. He's in a weird price point where like Kevin Magnussen, who I would prefer is more expensive than him, and Nico Hulkenberg, who I would also probably prefer more than him, is a little bit cheaper than him. But I don't think there's anything wrong. Like if you're in that price point, you want to be differential. I know Nico Hulkenberg, very popular, like we saw in the most selected data. So if you're really like trying to catch a rival in a mini league or something like that, I really don't mind Esteban Ocon. However, he's not a priority transfer, so I don't think you have to bring him in, but it just could be like a differential play there. Yuki Tsunoda gets the red flag, struggling, doesn't like, I mean, had some good practice data on Friday and Saturday, but then just totally like binned it in the wall at the end of Q2 to pull out a red flag there. Finished ahead of Liam Lawson, I guess, in qualifying, if you want to call it that way. And then, yeah, just another accident in the first turn. I think he said it in his like post race interview, or like actually during the race. He's like, I have terrible luck here. I do not like this track, apparently. So just the vibes in general are a little bit down for Yuki Tsunoda. However, it was confirmed that he will be doing a postseason test in a Red Bull for the first time. So that's a little bit of good news for him. Like that's something to look forward to. Hopefully he can bring some positive vibes to the Brazil Grand Prix, but I just think I'd get out of the Yuki Tsunoda business right now. It might be too late to get onto the Liam Lawson train if you don't have enough budget. So it is a little bit of a tough price point, but yeah, I think I'd sell Yuki Tsunoda going into the Brazil Grand Prix. And then Joe Guan Yu, he actually gets the green flag because he's gone up 0.5 million in the 2 of the last 3 races. So he has a little bit more upside than Valtteri Bottas at this point, which is kind of insane to say because one of those guys, Valtteri Bottas, has a chance of being on the grid in 2025, and Joe Guan Yu does not at all, and should not be anywhere near it, I would guess. I think he'll be a reserve driver, maybe. But yeah, in F1 Fantasy, Joe Guan Yu is kind of getting the job done by just like trundling along at the back, not picking up any DNFs, letting himself like qualify P20 as is per usual at this point, and then just avoiding crashes. Sauber is a tractor. They have not great strategy either. So yeah, just Joe Guan Yu is just kind of running his own race, but it does seem to be working a little bit for F1 Fantasy. So if you have to buy him in order to facilitate a bigger move further up your lineup, I don't mind that at all. And he actually gets the green flag for me. Picking the premiums, this is the final topic of the preview part. I'm about to do team selection. So like I said, you can hit the timestamps in the description below if you don't want to go over this. But I just wanted to look at points per race, points per million for the season and over the last 3 for the kind of the 5 drivers that a lot of us are picking between: Verstappen, Norris, Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, and Carlos Sainz. As you can see here, Leclerc is a pretty standout option. He's actually the best points per million on the season now after the last 2 races. So 26.9 points per race over the season for Charles Leclerc, but actually 1.19 points per million. Pips Lando Norris at 1.13 points per million. But Lando and Verstappen are up there 29.6 and 29.1 points per race overall. Oscar Piastri 25 points per race on the season, and Carlos Sainz 22.9 points per race over the last 3. However, tells us a totally different story. Just looking at it right here, if you're on the podcast side, you can flip over to the YouTube channel, F1 Fantasy Pole Position, and you'll get to see all these kind of graphics a little bit easier, but Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc lead the top five drivers here. Charles Leclerc, 37 points per race. Carlos Sainz, 35.6. Then it's Norris at 31.3. Verstappen at 29. He's pretty much bang on his season average again. And then Piastri, 27.3. Carlos Sainz, best bang for your buck driver over the last three, 1.53 points per million. Charles Leclerc, also right there, 1.46. Norris, 1.16. Piastri 1.06 and Verstappen 0.93. So it's pretty easy to eliminate Max Verstappen from this conversation. Like, he is fourth in points per race among these five over the last three races. He is last in points per million. Just, he's driving fantastically. Like, it's very, like, well, Mexico wasn't that fun to watch him drive. He was a little bit all over the place, but he had some fantastic defending. And Coda, I hope he brings that kind of energy to Brazil. But yeah, he's just like, we're not going to pay that much money when we're not even going to get extraordinarily more points than any of these cheaper assets. Norris, Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri, all better bang for your bucks. And getting, I mean, even Piastri right there, 27.3, and Verstappen's at 29, and you like have to pay so much less money for Oscar Piastri. That can upgrade your squad in a lot of different places. So I think right now it's a pretty clear top three between Norris, Leclerc, and Sainz. I'm just kind of off the Piastri train right now. And it's kind of like, do you want to go all in on Ferrari? This is assuming that we all have Ferrari and McLaren as our constructors, which I'm pretty sure everyone has. I think it's like at 98% in the global top 500. And it's like, if you have the budget to get up to Norris and Leclerc, don't mind that at all. If you have to go with a Leclerc Sainz, that's also a great option as well. But I think Norris, Leclerc, and Sainz are the clear top three out of the five premium assets right now. And it's just kind of going to come down to what we see on Friday's data. T1 squad right here: Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Franco Colapinto, Valtteri Bottas, and Alexander Albon. Like I said, 41 place Green Arrow, super small, 127.1 million in the bank for this squad. So if you are above that, you'll just have to wait for the T3 team selection that's coming up in 2, 3, 4 minutes right here. But I've got 3 free transfers for this squad, so it's very flexible where I can go. As far as like the premiums, the budget is a little bit constricting. I think the easiest move for me, the double move that I'll be making, and then just once again taking 3 transfers into the next race, it's a really, really nice position to be in, to just kind of have 3 free transfers, and you use 2 and you just roll 1 in and you've got another 3 free transfers. Like, that is like a very nice cheat code that I will definitely have to try and remember for next season. Like the first 2 races, like if you can just keep rolling 3, like it's almost like a mini wild card every single week if you ever need that to happen. So I don't think Lando is going to go anywhere. And that's going to be enough for me to go to Charles Leclerc and Zhou Guanyu with 0.0 in the bucket. Alexander Albon going down 0.2 and Zhou Guanyu going up 0.5. Nearly wiped out all of that plans to go down to Carlos Sainz. The plans would have been disastrous there. However, another option could be that I keep Carlos Sainz in and I bring in Charles Leclerc instead of Lando Norris. And that should give me a little bit of money to kind of upgrade from Albon. We got Pierre Gasly here. It's like Liam Lawson still in there as well. So depending on what I see from Friday, I could go with triple Ferrari, and that would let me kind of upgrade here. However, that would be 2 free transfers. I'm not entirely sure where I can get 9.8 million here. So I would just be out of the Yuki Tsunoda business. And yeah, that wouldn't really, I think I'd rather just have that kind of thing there with 2.9 left in the bank. And so I think the sensible moves for me with this T1 squad are just going to be keep Lando, because he's going to be the most captain driver in the game, I would think, unless we see something really bad on Friday, and just get Charles Leclerc back in, 0.0 in the bank, max it out with a triple back marker squad, Ferrari, McLaren, easy peasy. If Carlos Sainz looks like he's carried over his Mexico Grand Prix form to the Brazil Grand Prix, triple Ferrari is in the cards and just have like a little bit of budget left over, especially because Carlos Sainz is still a B tier asset, so he can likely still go up. And if he has a positive race on Sunday, he'll likely go up at least 0.3. And I don't think I'll lose out. It would take like a massive upset for me to not be able to afford Lando for the Las Vegas Grand Prix in a few weeks' time. So I might go with that route, could build some more budget, still try to get out this dang triple back marker strategy that I've pretty much been rocking since the summer break and have locked myself into since like the Logan Sargent debacle here. So I think this is where I'm going to go. Probably the two best drivers on the grid right now in terms of F1 fantasy, Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. And this will be where my T1 squad ends up. But make sure to tune in for the deadline live stream to see where I actually end up on Saturday. Here's the T3 squad, top 400 in the world, 134.7 in the bank. I may have slightly overestimated it earlier in the episode. And yeah, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Yuki Tsunoda, Franco Colapinto, Liam Lawson with Ferrari and McLaren as the constructors. Yeah, very bold with Ferrari and McLaren as constructors. I'm sure not every other team that is still engaged also has that. But I'm looking at now, I've only got 2 free transfers for this, and I really like having the 3 free transfers. Just talked about that with the T1 squad. And like I was mentioning before, like Yuki Tsunoda got the red flag for me earlier in the little green flag, yellow flag, red flag segment I had. And that gives me enough money to get part of the pretty much leaders of Formula B, Haas. I'm not really counting Aston Martin. They're in like Formula 1.5. Yeah, just not an option at all. And that is a lovely move. I'd love to get Nico Hulkenberg in my team. I think I'd have the strongest asset from Williams, from VCarb, and maybe not from Haas. Kevin Magnussen still pretty much has been phenomenal this season in F1 fantasy. And then, yeah, Lando and Charles Leclerc right there. I do have the wild card for this team. So if I wanted to, like, if something crazy happens on Friday, I could just like totally switch it up. The other option would be to kind of look at how to get Max Verstappen in my team, especially with this engine penalty. So we can look at that here. If I could get there in 2 free transfers. Yeah, I could. I would just have to bring in Valtteri Bottas, which not sure if I love that all that much. So like we were just talking about how I had the wild card. I could bring in Yuki there. That leaves me with 8.3. I could get to Joe, who got a green flag for me. So that'd be a red flag guy and a green flag guy for me in this T3 squad. But for Verstappen as a differential, possibly, I mean, he's going to get that. Helmut Marko says he's going to get that penalty or the grid penalty on Sunday afternoon. I'll wait for Christian Horner to tell me that tomorrow or on Friday officially, just because Marco says quite a lot of stuff in F1. So we'll be kind of waiting for the official word on that. But yeah, this is a slightly differential lineup I could go with. Double back marker here with Franco and Joe Guan Yu and Yuki Tsunoda, who I don't love in F1 fantasy right now. But yeah, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc. I haven't even looked at if I could run both guys here, actually. Lando, yeah, that would give me enough to get Valtteri Bottas in the side. So that would be a very big differential squad going with probably like a very strong asset here who's likely to get a lot of overtakes. One of the drivers that's most likely to win, I think you would say in your previews, and then Ferrari and McLaren as the strongest constructors. And yeah, I don't hate that. The triple back marker is a little bit risky. Also, like Valtteri Bottas, I was looking it up on F1 Fantasy Tools. I am pretty sure he's fallen 0.1 million in every race since Austria. So, like, you're going to lose 0.1 million with Bottas in your squad, but budget isn't too much of a problem in this squad, which is very nice problem to have. And yeah, this is a little bit of a differential lineup, but I'm more likely to kind of just go with the Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, and then the Colapinto, Lawson, and Nico Hulkenberg lineup that I was looking at earlier. But that'll do it for this week's episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position, the Mexico Grand Prix reviews slash Brazil Grand Prix preview episode. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like in the comments below. Drop a like on the video, hit the subscribe button. We did get over 550 subscribers last week, so thank you to everyone that has subscribed to the YouTube channel. But let's pick it up towards the end of the season. You can, if you got like a healthy lead in your mini leagues, like, you know, you can let your friends know that the channel exists. Sharing is caring. It's okay. You've probably got if you've been watching the channel all season, you should have a pretty healthy lead in your mini leagues, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But yeah, the lineup locks for the Brazilian Grand Prix are going to be, I think, oh god, 2 p.m. UK time, 10 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Brazil. But I will be live 1 hour before lineup lock, which is going to be 2 p.m. Germany time, for 1 hour to talk about all your F1 fantasy lineups and what I think I saw from Friday, and if I'm leaning any such way, if anything has really changed off of the team selection vibes that I just gave out. You can follow me on X at F1UNFPL if you want to ask me any questions between now and Saturday. And yeah, that'll pretty much do it for this week. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I will talk to you on Saturday.